I'm Mark Burns, and today we're going inside the Grove with David Martin. David is the CEO of Terra, a Miami-based development firm responsible for more than 8 million square feet of residential, commercial, and mixed-use projects across South Florida. Since founding the company in 2001, he built a reputation for design-driven development, working with some of the world's leading architects to create spaces that are both forward-thinking and deeply connected to their surroundings. In Coconut Grove, that approach has helped shape the neighborhood's evolution, bringing in projects that prioritize walkability, green space, and a sense of place rather than just density. In this episode, we talk about how the Grove is evolving, what thoughtful development really looks like, and how to grow a neighborhood while still protecting what makes it special. All that and more right now on Inside the Grove. All right, welcome back to Inside the Grove. I'm with David Martin today, CEO of Terra Group. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, listen, you're a big part of Coconut Grove. You've got a lot going on. You've done a lot of projects here in the Grove. The Grove is a challenging area, right? It's the people are very outspoken. These buildings you guys have created are beautiful. I see you use some of the most well-renowned or even some up-and-coming architects in your building. It seems like you like to have a little artistic touch more so than other developers in the building. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. I think Coconut Grove is a very special place. Not only is the natural beauty and tree canopy special, but also its walkability and for us, when we go into a project, we really bring some of the best design talent to the project. And so we've worked with Bjarke Ingels from Denmark, who's a world-renowned architect. We've worked with Rem Koolhaus. We've also worked with Arquitectonica, amazing firm locally.
Yep.
And we've also worked on our Grove Central project on 27th Avenue. We worked with the Touzé family, and then also worked with Larry Beam. So we like to have a mix of diversity of architectural typologies. Most of our developments have been very low density. For instance, our Park Grove project that we did with Rem Koolhaus, we were entitled to do around 900 units, and we only did over 200. So really around 30% of the allowable density there. Wow. In our Grove at Grand Bay project with Bjarke Ingels, we were entitled zone to do 400 units, and we really only built over 90. So I think that we've seen a lot of locals kind of moving from their homes and wanting to be part of the urbanism and walkability and excitement of the Grove. And I think with every new project we work on, we really focus on not only having amazing trees and really trying to increase the tree canopy, but also trying to bring new experiences to the Grove. And so for our well project, we're actually the ground floor and the anchor of that project is a wellness social club. And so it's going to have a 2-acre rooftop that's going to have a mixture of health and fitness and wellness components. And then the ground floor is going to really have a amazing place for body work, for mindfulness and those types of things. And so we're always looking to add to the diversity and culture of the place, and we try to bring the best minds across the country to help us do that.
I'm excited to see what it becomes. We have a front row seat here. It's right outside of our windows here at our offices in the bid. We're welcoming a new projects into the bid. I love it, and I'm excited to see how it evolves and the beautiful building that you put up there. So your work, your reputation precedes you for sure. It's you've really done some great projects here. Going away from development, before you became a developer, and what was your relationship with Coconut Grove like?
So I grew up here as a kid, my whole life. I remember, the days of Hungry Sailor and the days of Society Billiards. And so, as a teenager, we spent a lot of time in Coconut Grove. And and we saw it's neighborhoods go through their transformation over time, whether it was in the 60s or the 90s or now recently. They go through their evolution, and I think one of the special qualities about the Grove is that its roots are very deep, and so a lot of its identity, it's a very mature neighborhood with a lot of people that have a lot of pride in it and kind of really want to belong and connect with it, and so with that is a great opportunity. Our development rights are there's a lot of scarcity. We like that as from a real estate fundamental perspective, but at the same time we want to be progressive, and we want to bring opportunities for people to be able to live here in an urban setting and be able to take advantage of all the new offices, all the new commercial components, and really deliver something that special so that people can really share with their families what Miami has to offer. And I think Coconut Grove is a great identity for Miami, and it's its environmental qualities, its celebration of the water, from a sailing, standpoint, and from a, really the waterfront is full of parks, and so I grew up, here. My children grew up here. My son, went to St. Stephen's. He's now at Ransom, and so for me, it's really amazing to be part of the community. And now, I'm raising my family here and living here as well.
Love it. Yeah, no, I mean, the amount of sailing clubs and beautiful yacht clubs and things like that, and just having this water here, a lot of people aren't even aware and don't take advantage that we have one of the biggest marinas in all of Florida right here. It's truly a beautiful destination. I've fallen in love with this place. You're lucky to have lived here your whole life. I'm just kind of getting to experience it now. I used to work for the real estate department at the city of Miami under Dan Rodenberg, and I remember you coming in a long time ago, maybe 10 years ago or what. I don't remember which project it was, but you were probably, you've come a long way since then. I mean, that was probably early on in your company's. Yeah. And your company's.
So we started the firm in 2001. We started focused a little more in Miami and maybe Miami Beach and downtown, and then in 2011, we purchased the Grand Bay Hotel, and that was kind of the first move. And then we then negotiated and worked on a deal with the county where we created the transit-oriented development called Grove Central, where we have a Target, a Sprouts Grocery Market, and we have 400
I go there quite often.
Units. Yeah, so,
I go there quite often.
Yeah, so for us, I think how we connect the transit station to the water, and how do we connect the water and everybody that lives to the transit station, and I think that that requires a lot more improvements and enhancements to for pedestrian safety and also tree canopy in order to really be able to make people feel comfortable walking and connecting to transit so they can connect to other parts of the city, I think is a big mission for us.
Now, speaking of the tree canopy, I saw recently that you guys had donated a couple of trees over to one of the parks here for the city.
Yeah, I think there were like almost over 9 maybe trees that we donated to the city and the bid and those types of things. And for us, when we built Park Grove, we created a little park in the back, and so there was all these amazing, beautiful, mature poincianas and oaks and others, and we aggregated them all and created this little park where Sadel's and Coco is, and where our offices are at Mary Street as well. So we've had a history of trying to, improve the tree canopy in the public realm, trying to take trees that are inside a property and put them to the outside, and then we also bring new trees, and so we're improving the tree canopy significantly with every project we do. And that's, I think, an important element of what makes Coconut Grove special.
Very, very important. It's very important to the community, and it does bring a little more character to the Grove.
Sure.
I got a question for you. So, with finally seeing some development, if you will, happening at the Playhouse, right? At least they did the demolition of the majority of it. I mean, how do you see when that's up and running, and there's hopefully a garage there and a new Playhouse? I mean, how do you see that transforming the Grove?
No, listen, I mean, it's been something that we've been thinking about and the community's been thinking about for decades. I remember when we purchased the Mary Street garage, We part of our funding, part of the consideration we gave the city $6 million to build the Bayshore garage that's currently up, and we also allocated around $6 million for the Playhouse garage, and then we also, part of the consideration, also went to buy new trolleys and also underground a lot of FPL. And so for me, I think the big move is how do we hack capitalism to help solve these things, but then also how do we steward these projects in order to complete them in an efficient way. And I think the Playhouse has had its struggle, and I think there's a lot of passion around the project and a lot of passion with what direction it should go, how big a theater it should be, what the design should be. And I think the county and Arquitectonica did a great job with kind of trying to preserve its, the front part and the facade in order to restore and preserve that identity of what it was. And, this is a theater that, had Milton Berle and Christopher Walken and some of the most special, amazing acts and actors in the world. And so we used to be called the Coconut Grove, and so for us, I think it's our duty to see that project through and to activate it and really create not only an energy for the retailers, but also an energy of art and performance art for our children. And with all the schools and children that are here, I think having that as a resource for children is going to be a big element. And I think we need to do everything in our power to see that project through.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think the schools can utilize it as for their performing arts classes and things like that. I think it'd be great for the community, do shows. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Well, kind of speaking of that, where do you see in the next 5 to 10 years, right, the growth in the Grove and change? Where do you see the Grove kind of heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think there's definitely pockets, that are undergoing redevelopment opportunities. I think it's much more small scale. I think the zoning is pretty restricted on where you could actually build density and intensity, and I think that's one of the nice things about the Grove, that there's some predictability there. But I think there's pockets. For instance, I'm really looking forward to what can happen in Grand Avenue. How do we have that Little Bahamas kind of preserve kind of that character and soul of that place, but at the same time create some economic development, some energy, and kind of create a catalyst for that neighborhood. We've studied that a lot, and I think there's just huge potential in Grand Avenue. And I think, for the most part, most of the Grove is somewhat mature, somewhat established and settled, and I think what you'll see is much more small-scale projects, whether it's along 27th Avenue, whether you see along Grand Avenue, and I think those will kind of improve the loop, right? When somebody comes and visits the Grove, we want them to stay here. We want them to walk around, and I think we've done a great job over the last 20 years just really repositioning the Grove and re-tenanting and the whole merchandising plans. We have great people like Michael Comras that's done some amazing jobs doing that. We've had, Timo Kip that's, really done an amazing job with Mayfair from an office standpoint and bringing great, daytime traffic and great companies, incredible companies to come to the Grove and make it their home. I think you'll start seeing a little more incremental small office developments, some small retail projects, but definitely I think Grand Avenue and 27th Avenue, those corridors need some love, and I think you'll start seeing more there.
It's amazing. We have such a small area, but such a high concentration of developers living here in Coconut Grove, right? And I think that's a really good thing, right? It gives you take more ownership and you care more about the property when you live in that area and when you shop in that area. Well, last kind of development question, right?
Sure.
You've kind of expanded on this a little bit, right? But maybe go into more detail. Developing in the Grove as opposed, right? You said you started out in like the beach and some other areas, and developing in the Grove. What's different about development in the Grove than other areas of Miami?
I think, we have the same challenges throughout our county. We have, we have issues on affordability. We have issues with our transit infrastructure. We have issues with flooding. We have, issues with, schools not having enough capacity, and so these are happening throughout our county. Some municipalities and neighborhoods welcome the density, some don't. And so our job is just to really work with the community and kind of figure out what's the next step, what's the next phase, and I think what you'll find is more and more people just and I think the real estate values are there, is that people like what we've done over the last, I would say, 15 years in the Grove, and so the question is, how do we make it more available to all different income levels, and how does the Grove become more mixed income? And a lot of times that requires supply, even though there's some issues whenever supply is discussed. But if we could find areas for gentle density and kind of really connecting, I'm very involved with the Underline, and that's been a great organization and a great, green infrastructure connection kind of spine. And 27th Avenue is that rib, that you want to have people feel safe and comfortable to be able to walk around certain pockets. So I think, more and more, if we could focus on infrastructure enhancements to improving the walkability of the neighborhood, if we could add tree canopy whenever we can, I think it'll allow for this ability to show some more supply in a mixed income neighborhood, rather than having just very few of a certain product. And I think that's the secret. Once you have less and less of something, it just becomes unaffordable. And I think we want to make the Grove accessible to all different income levels, all different cultures. And I think that's a kind of an American goal and a Miami goal. And I think it's an important conversation that we need to be having.
Yeah, as a father of two young kids, right? You worry about where they're going to be able to live in South Florida when the time comes. But yeah, no, the Underline you mentioned is it's such a cool project, and I think it's got a lot of potential. I think if you get the right tenant mix there to kind of utilize that outdoor area, I think the sky's the limit. So
I agree.
I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see that's an area for sure, and that we'll see some really great growth. All right, let's get on to our last segment. It's called the Grove 3, right? Simple, fun questions here.
Sure.
So, cafecito or cocktails? What's David Martin's drink of choice? Cafecito, can't go wrong there. And where's a spot where you like to get
Emissary.
Emissary. Emissary is a wonderful place.
Yeah.
I partake there myself from time to time for sure.
Sure.
They'll love to have your ringing endorsement here, I'm sure.
Right.
And then the last thing we have, right? Describe the Grove for me in one word, if you can.
I would say, I would say trees, environmental. I think that's probably the most important word of the Grove, and how we preserve that tree canopy at the same time while we're going through some of the transformations. I think that's.
I know a lot of people who would agree with you 100%. Well, David Martin, thank you for joining us on
sir.
Inside the Grove, and you guys make sure to tune in next time.